When it comes to learning this joint, sometimes people aren't really sure if they have really gotten the weld in how they should. Today, I'm going to show you a fun and easy way to see clearly how to weld it and how you did with it. My name is Dusty, and I've been TIG welding in the industry for almost 20 years now. My YouTube channel is for the positive people in the welding community who love TIG welding as much as I do. This is for the beginners, people looking to up their game on the torch, or just anyone who's interested in learning about TIG welding in a fun, negativity-free environment. So join me on my mission on my channel and let's get welding. This is Pacific Arc TIG Welding. Hello arc heads, welcome to another episode. Thank you for joining me today. When I'm teaching students in my program, one of the funnest things I get to teach them is the butt joint. It's the first time we take all of the skills that they've learned so far on flat stuff and apply those techniques on their first actual joint. Now, I'm going to tell you one of the most common things that people struggle with when they reach this point in the program. When people start working over a joint like this, understandably, people become a little bit timid about burning through to the other side. So what tends to happen is people will use an inadequate amount of heat, thinking that it will save them from burning through to the other side. This leaves us with a couple problems. The first one is that the overall look of the weld will turn out obviously too narrow and it will stack up too high in the center. So basically what is happening here is our filler material or our reinforcement has not sat down and fully blended into the base material. We can be using the perfect amount of filler rod at the perfect travel speed. However, using an inadequate amount of heat, this will not get us the results we want. So when we are doing a joint like this, the idea is to burn into the base plate as much as possible, given the different requirements you may need to do for this basic joint. The second problem that usually occurs is that in using an inadequate amount of heat out of fear of blowing through to the other side and ruining a joint will, in other words, prevent us from getting proper penetration. When I was first learning this joint, I had this problem as well. It wasn't until somebody showed me a really easy way to check and see how things did after I finished. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna perform one of these joints, and after I finish it, we'll have a quick visual inspection to see how it went. Then we're gonna cut it open and check and see how I did as far as heat input and basic penetration. Now, a brief disclaimer here. What you're about to see here is in no way a representation of what you should use as a welding test. There are a million different ways that people do different types of testing for TIG welding and a million different uses for this joint that we're gonna do here today. This is just a way I like having fun with some of my students when they are learning this joint. Do not follow this as anything except for a fun exercise to do while learning. There, my hands are clean. So let's set the machine up and let's rip one. So as usual, we're gonna run a really quick blast of pre-flow just to clear the weld area. We're gonna have minimal start amps so we can get going at a lower amperage as usual. For welding amperage, we're gonna have this one set at 160 amps. That's probably gonna be plenty for what we're doing here. For frequency, we're gonna be running 120 hertz as normal. And for balance as normal, we're gonna be using 30% positive. Minimal end amperage. And for post-flow, we're gonna have about 5 seconds of post-flow set. And for argon, we're gonna be running anywhere between 15 to 20 CFH through our working pressure on our regulator. Okay, because this stuff is so thin, it's going to heat up really fast. I'm definitely pausing a little bit each step just to make sure everything sinks through to the other side. As you can see, I am actually adding quite a bit of filler, but because I am pushing through to the other side, you can see the reinforcement is falling a bit flat. As I approach the end here, you can see that I am backing off the heat quite a bit. I'm actually giving it a little extra filler to make sure that I don't let it fall concave. Now that we're done that one, let's fire up a butt weld on some thicker plate as well. This material is 3/16 of an inch thick or 4.6 millimeters. This stuff is a little trickier because it is thicker. You can't get confirmation that you are in fact punching through to the other side. You just gotta go with keeping a keen eye on things and adapting as you go. All right, that puppy is cooled off. Let's have a look. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this one. The puddle spacing was a little bit far apart for my liking, but I was just trying to make sure I punched through to the other side. This is what we ended up with. Pretty consistent width for the most part. Taking a look at all of our edges, everything stayed pretty clean. But for the moment of truth, let's take a look. All right, so you can see we are through, obviously, to the other side. You can see pretty consistently that I've got adequate penetration for the most part. Arguably a little bit too much, but for the most part, having a camera in my face, this ain't too bad. Again, as far as the width goes, pretty much matches the top side. And reinforcement on top, relatively flat because we wanted to punch through mostly to the other side. And reinforcement on the bottom, like I said, a little bit much, but overall, for the demo we're doing today, pretty good. Also, remember this one? We did this one a few weeks ago. The link is right there. This is one of my favorite episodes I've done recently. But somebody in the comments was complaining that I didn't show any penetration. So for the sake of it, let's cut this one open too and have a look. Okay, now that we have had a brief visual inspection on this one, I'll show you how to do a basic etch test that you can basically do at your shop with basic supplies and ingredients. First thing I'm going to do here is cut it into sections. As you can see here, I'm doing it on my bandsaw. You can use a cutting disc, you can use whatever you have handy. Just make sure that you're wearing proper safety gear and do it safely. So when I'm cutting it into pieces, I usually pick somewhere along the start, somewhere in the first inch or so, because as anybody who watches my channel knows, I always talk about how important the start of a TIG weld is. The next cut I will take is somewhere in the last inch or so as well, on the other end of the weld. And then just for the heck of it, I'll cut it somewhere in the middle as well. Again, this is just a basic look at how things went for the length of the pass. There are different testing situations which call for different amount of coupons to be cut. But like I said, when I'm teaching this one to my students in my program, this is an awesome way to get a simple look at how they did with their heat input on this one. Now, I mentioned how important the start was. For anybody who watches my channel, you know my saying, fill and chill. This is the most important thing I teach to my students. We start on it right away and it applies to all the exercises in my program. I've done a full episode on fill and chill here. I always laugh when people point to something that's supposed to appear on screen and it never appears. So check this episode out here. This will go over a bunch of stuff that's going to help you out with getting this dialed. Totally nailed that. So after I've cut them into strips, the next thing I'm going to do is grind them down with something like a Scotch-Brite grinder or a 3M pad on a Scotch-Brite grinder, whatever they're called. This is going to remove most of the grain structure and smooth out the surface to a uniform finish. Doing it on the edge of the coupons will create a smoother surface so that when we have a closer look, I'll be able to easily tell the difference between filler material and base material. This next step, really make sure you're in a well-ventilated area for. I'm going to use this stuff here. I've used this stuff in the past. It's basically the only thing I've used to do this because it works great. If you know of anything else that you use to do this, let me know in the comments below. I'll check it out. But what this is, you can buy it at most grocery stores. It's easy off oven cleaner. This stuff smells horrible. It's really harsh on your nose and throat, so it's important to do it outside. Wear proper safety gear. Don't get this stuff on your hands, your skin, or your eyes. But the most opportune time to do this is that when the coupon is still warm after grinding it. I will spray it on the edge of the surface that is the cut section of the weld. Spray it on relatively heavy, then let it dry. Takes about 10 minutes. After this time, I'll take it, I'll rinse it off thoroughly with water. And then we'll take a look at what we got here. So now that we've washed the stuff off, you can see there is a difference in the finish that the materials have compared to each other. We can see the difference between the filler material and the base material. So the top obviously will have shown the weld, and the bottom will have shown this is the start of the weld. This shows the penetration beginning, and we can now see a difference between the two materials. This is the difference between the finish in the filler material and then the base material. You can see it clearly defined here. You can see how much reinforcement was on top. You can see how much it cut down through the middle and then came out the bottom. This piece is the same. Again, we can see the difference between the filler material and the base material, and then this one as well. Obviously with the butt weld, we know that we have penetrated it properly because we can see evidence of that on the backside. But with something like a butt joint on a thicker plate, obviously we might not be able to see everything on the backside. So an etch test will give you a clear representation of that. You can see the difference between the filler material and the base material here as well. It is dug into the material really thoroughly. Again, this material is 3/16 of an inch thick or 4.6 millimeters. So punching all the way through takes a little bit more effort with this stuff. Then the halfway point, we can see that the etching has shown us clearly the difference between the filler material again and the base material. We can see a little fracture on the bottom there. That's just the gap in the joint that was left. But you can see there has been an effect of the filler material getting all the way through for the most part. And again, as we come towards the end of the plate, obviously it's smoking hot by this point, so we know we're going to be in there. But you can see it clearly again with this one. All right, let's take a look at this one. So once again, we can see how much we punched into the bottom plate. You can see evidence of that penetration on the bottom there as we got into the base plate. And as we tilted into the light, we can see that we actually got all the way through on the top there as well. So we achieved really good penetration with these fillets. This side again, you can see it is punched into the bottom plate as well as penetrated through. Obviously we can see evidence of this on the inside for the most part, but it's clear as day when we do an etch test like this. The other side here as well, again, it is punched all the way through into the base plate on the bottom, and we've punched through to the other side as well. Obviously now we know we had to destroy all of the pieces. We can no longer use them in order to do this testing, but it's a fun exercise where you can have a clear look at the work you've done and how it has affected the base material. So again, this is a fun exercise for practice. You can basically see how you did with this joint for the most part, but if you're using thicker plate like I did in that demo as well, it's a nice way to cut it open and see how much you actually punched into the surface if you can't really see any evidence of penetration on the backside. As I mentioned, there is some really important variables to learn with your starts. Don't forget, if you dig this topic, check out this episode here. This episode is going to give you even more game to applying the saying, fill and chill, to help you get better quality results when you first get going with TIG welding. Have you got any cool ways that you also check stuff like this? I might do a fill it break episode. Let me know in the comments if you're down to see that one. If you are a true arc head, leave a dime in the comments below. Leave a nice comment, say what's up, and go out today and do a random act of kindness for a stranger. My name is Dusty, fill and chill. We'll talk soon. Peace.